So hateful Hillary Clinton is back at it and doing what she does best, attacking Trump supporters. This time, she says they are in a cult.
So many of those extremists, those MAGA extremists, take their marching orders from Donald Trump, who has no credibility left by any measure. He's only in it for himself. He's now defending himself in civil actions and criminal actions. And when do they break with him? You know, because at some point, you know, maybe there needs to be a formal deprogramming of the cult members, but something needs to happen. The base of the Republican Party, for whatever combination of reasons, and it is emotional and psychological, sees in him someone who speaks for them. Maybe they don't like migrants. Maybe they don't like gay people or black people or the woman who got the promotion at work they didn't get, whatever the reason. So it is like a cult. And somebody has to break the, break that momentum.
Ha ha. So Hillary thinks millions of Trump voters need to be deprogrammed. It's a pathetic new low for the twice failed presidential candidate, but it's not a total shock. It seems like Hillary has been thumbing through the dictionary and finding new ways to demonize Republicans. Who can forget the basket of deplorables?
You could put half of Trump supporters into what I call the basket of deplorables.
I remember as a young student, you know, trying to figure out how did people get basically drawn in by Hitler. You saw the rally in Ohio the other night. Trump is there ranting and raving for more than an hour, and you have these rows of young men with their arms raised. I thought, what is going on?
Oh, Hillary. Hillary must be spooked. Perhaps it's because a majority of Americans trust Donald Trump and the Republicans to do a better job on the key issues that matter to voters.
There's been one poll after another poll after another poll this week that has shown that the Republicans are just absolutely bashing Democrats when it comes to issues.
Look at this. Republicans over Democrats on issues like inflation, the economy, immigration. These are 25, nearly 30-point margins creating jobs.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
Huge, huge numbers.
All right, Jessica, you would hear words like deplatforming, deprogramming, cult, all haters in countries like the Soviet Union, China, North Korea. Isn't that in itself a threat to democracy?
Hillary Clinton giving an interview? No.
Saying what she said in the interview.
No. It's not a threat to democracy. Does it land in a bunch of GOP ads heading into an election? Sure. That's what happened with the basket of deplorables comment. But I really need everyone to spare me the faux outrage and the pearl clutching about this. Little collection of things that Donald Trump and high-ranking Republicans call liberals on a daily basis: anarchists, anti-American, deranged, communists, corrupt, compromised, groomers and perverts, thugs and traitors. Now, she was explicit that she was talking about a subsection of the Republican Party the same way that Joe Biden is when he talks about this MAGA extremism. But you tell me, if the leader of the Democratic Party, so that would be Joe Biden, was facing 4 indictments with 91 felony counts, he had been found liable of sexually assaulting a woman and defaming her, that's E. Jean Carroll, guilty of fraud, sharing the nation's secrets, not only in the Mar-a-Lago indictment, but there was a report yesterday from ABC News that he had shared information about our nuclear submarine capacities with an Australian billionaire who's a member at Mar-a-Lago, who had then gone on and shared that with dozens of other people, and ended up making a purchase, I think, of 3 subs. It included specifics up to how many nuclear warheads they carry and how close they can get to Russian subs without being detected. And then I told you, so all of that is happening, and he's shooting up in the polls. And when you see those interviews of Trump supporters outside of the rallies, they're like, none of this is true. It's the big lie. He won the election, et cetera. And you wouldn't say to me, you guys are in a cult? It's actually tame, what Hillary Clinton was saying.
Jesse, you know, no one on the Republican Party side has called for the silencing of newspapers and social media conversation.
He ran.
Excuse me, I'm asking Jesse a question. Okay? No one on the Republican side has said, Do not let anyone talk about Hunter's laptop. Make sure that the conservatives get suppressed on social media. I mean, this is consistent with the whole idea of silencing Americans if they don't agree with the left.
I want to be deprogrammed by Hillary. I want to be told that Fetterman is a smart dresser and Joe Biden's smart and the laptop's real. I want to wake up in the morning and be forced to watch Morning Joe tell me what a woman is. And then I want to read the New York Times and watch Paul Krugman tell me now is the time to refinance my mortgage at 8%. These are the things that we all need to do. We need to bring our masks back, probably get boosted and buy tickets to Hamilton. But if we go buy tickets to Hamilton and we go in our Teslas and we get carjacked, I'm going to be reprogrammed to not tell the police what the perpetrator looked like, because I don't need to be re-victimizing people. But I do have to get home to read Jesse Jr. a bedtime story. He needs to read a book about gay sex before bed. These are the kind of things that Hillary will reprogram the entire country to do. I want to be told that my wife should be at CrossFit and I need to be home supporting her and making her dinner. These are the types of things we need to do. Everything now is on the table. Okay? And if we don't know these things and we don't understand that Russia interfered in the election and that the lab leak is a conspiracy theory, then we're just not good Americans. She has to do this, Jessica, because she has lost her ability to persuade us. She cannot, through deed or action, make people understand that she relates to them. She says, I don't know why people relate to Trump and thinks he represents us. Well, that's why. Because Hillary has abandoned this country. She cannot connect with the voters. And this is what people do in North Korea.
She got millions more votes than he
This
did.
is what people do in North Korea. When their entire country is devastated by dumb policies, they try to brainwash the peasants into believing everything is great. She knows it's over, and that's all they have left.
Greg, Joe Scarborough thinks it's unbelievable that the Republicans are so far ahead in terms of the economy, crime, immigration. Is he living in an alternate universe?
No, it could be. He just might be stupid. I mean, there's usually that could always be the option. If you ever watch Morning Joe, you can tell. A couple of things. Number one, you got to define what a cult is, okay? A cult isn't defined by its supporters. It's defined by destroying those who don't support you. So Scientology is not a cult because it has followers. It is a cult because it goes after people who leave or people that are against it. That is the party of the Democrats. Who created cancel culture? Wasn't the Republicans, it was the Democrats. What you're seeing right now, and it's a bigger issue, you're seeing cancel culture on a wider, larger scale. You wonder why people are worried about 2024? Because there are a group of elites that are already placing targets on people's backs. From the top, Elon Musk and Trump, to the bottom, the January 6th trespassers. And if you call it out, if you dare to call it out, a target will be placed on you. If you talk about issues that matter, that the Democrats have abandoned, whether it's immigration or crime or education, you will need deprogramming. You will go to the camp. Again, this is cancel culture. It is no longer a bug in the system. It is the system. You have the FBI now targeting MAGA Republicans as terrorists. That's part of this equation. So how should the rest of us react? How should half the country react? Should we just laugh it off? I mean, you said Trump says all these bad things, or actually you didn't say that. You said this is what people say about liberals and Democrats. Fine, that's name calling. Trump targeted people in power. He didn't go after voters, right? She goes after voters. She goes after Americans. He went after the media, and he went after politicians, and he went after the Democratic Party. He never went after, quote, the small d Democrat. So it validates everything that Trump has said and others. They are coming for you. They're just no longer hiding it. They want us to be scared. They want us to stay home. They want you to think twice before you say anything or like a post by Trump on Truth Social. But what are we supposed to do? Because if we say something about it, then we get targeted, right? That's what's happening.
Kennedy, with Biden
really quickly
losing steam, with Biden, let me just go down. With Biden losing steam in multiple polls now, is it the best play for the Democrats to just smear Republicans?
No.
Or is it smart for them to just change policies, as it sounds like Joe Biden is trying to do?
What she's doing by going so hard after Trump and his supporters, to Greg's point, is pointing out what a weak, feeble, and incompetent president that we have. If, you know, and Jessica believes what she's saying. And, you know, you list some facts about the former president. You know, he's under indictment. He's been charged. He's been found liable. He's in a lot of trouble. Given all of that, on all of the critical issues facing voters, not just Republicans, Democrats, independents, he's still ahead in double digits where it is most important to hurting voters, and that's inflation and the economy. According to these new polls, he's 25, 30 points ahead of Joe Biden, a cult leader who will see the inside of a courtroom in a number of venues, who is so troubled and corrupt and compromised that he's 25 points ahead from a sitting president who, according to Hillary Clinton, is a man of accomplishment. But she's talking about a formal deprogramming. That means at the hands of the government. And that is what they do in North Korea. That is what happened to the South Vietnamese. That is what happened to people in Soviet Russia who were disappeared by the tens of millions. And that's why civil libertarians fight to the death for things like free speech, because we have to be able to talk about things. We have to be able to call people names. We have to be able to like things without fear of retribution or reprogramming. And she has shown her hand. That is what she wants to do, because she has lost the war. She has lost the ideas. And now she's going after a person who is so compromised, he's beating the living daylight out of someone who is supposedly accomplished. He's accomplished at turning his own party and good Americans away from him.
So in that same poll, by the way, Biden is ahead of Trump by 2 points. But I want to say something about what Greg... Yeah. Look at it's 51 to 49%.
Well,
so
it depends on the poll, but
the poll you just showed. But there's an important point.
Yeah, okay.
When you say Trump doesn't go after the small d people, trying to disenfranchise voters and make their votes not count, which is what he did in Arizona, Pennsylvania, Georgia, et cetera, with this big lie about how he won the election.
That's your interpretation.
No,
yeah,
it's not.
that's
not even
editorializing what you interpret.
I mean, it's a good opinion, but it's not real.
By
the way, I love how Hillary said that. You know what? It could be they don't like gay people. This is from somebody who was not for gay marriage, but Trump was.
Yeah, and a woman who had a war room against other women. So let's not get started with Hillary.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.